success. He's a Commonwealth gold medalist, a European silver medalist, and after his playing career, he became England's leading coach. Welcome to Nicky Jarvis.
Good evening, everybody.
His wife, Linda, went one better. She became European Ladies Double Champion in 1976 and European Mixed Doubles Champion in 1980, pairing with Jill Hammersley or Jill Parker, and in the Mixed Doubles, pairing with Des Douglas. She's also a Commonwealth gold medalist. And once again, I've got Elisa Khalid, who is now one of our regular members. And those of you who know Elisa will know she is both a junior and a senior Scottish international and is training to be a medical surgeon in Glasgow. Mark Lundberg is here as well, my right-hand man. And Mark is a former junior international and at the moment is also a national selector. Right, so it's welcome to everybody. And Nicky, memories of Scotland?
Many years ago, I was selected to play for or represent England in the Scottish Open when I was 14 or 15. And we went up there and we actually stayed with some Scottish family. We were very well looked after. The tournament went quite well. I think I won the juniors, lost in the semis of the seniors, I think. But yeah, very happy memories. We were up there for about 4 days. I was with another English player, Alan Fletcher, and on the train coming back, we were both speaking in a Scottish accent, which was quite. We sort of looked at each other when we said goodbye. And he said, "We've been speaking in Scottish accent all the way down," and it was amazing. But yeah, so that was my first memories of Scotland. Very nice. Since then, I've been up there quite a few times, played in the Scottish Open a few times, and also played golf, which is very good. Great courses.
Yeah, and you've also helped me to coach back in the as well. So that's good. Right. As they do on television, we're going to have a flashback. And the flashback is the World Championships in 1975 in Calcutta. And England are playing Japan, and Japan are a world power. And one Nicky Jarvis managed to win all his 3 games. Can you tell us about that, Nicky? Incredible achievement.
1975. Well, 2 years previous, we played in the World Championships in Sarajevo, 1973, and again we played Japan. And Trevor Taylor, Dennis Neal, and myself were in a match that lasted for I don't know many hours. And Trevor won 3, Dennis won 1. And I lost 3. I lost to Hasegawa, who was a world champion a few years previous. I lost to him when it was 4-all. So it was a devastating experience for me, sort of emotionally. And this was about 10:30 at night we finished, and the hotel was about 12 miles away. So I told the rest of the team I wasn't getting on the bus. I was going to run back to the hotel, basically as a punishment for losing, which is a bit crazy. But and I thought to myself, that's not going to happen anymore. You know, I'm not going to be putting myself in that position. Basically, my attitude was I felt a bit inferior to the players, and didn't really put a performance in. So that was 1973, and for that year and the following year, my results were very average as far as international play was concerned. And then 1974-75 started playing better, and Trevor Taylor and I formed a good partnership. We played in the team events in different parts of the world, and got to Calcutta, 1975. We were all playing pretty well at the time. And yeah, we played Japan. Trevor lost 3 this time, ironically, and Dennis won 1, and I managed to win 3, which was, yeah, it was. I had a good day that day. Won 3 against India, 3 against Japan.
But I mean, especially with your kind of game as well. I mean, having won 2, what was it like? You must have been knackered going on for that 3rd one.
Well, I mean, your adrenaline's running, and we trained extremely hard. I sort of had probably 3 years of the hardest training I'd ever done, physical training. So I actually felt quite good during the during the team event competition. So each day I was, I felt pretty strong. But I think it was adrenaline that kept you going towards the end of the match.
Yeah. Was that, had you been training in Japan, or was that afterwards?
It was a few years before. I went to Japan. I was sponsored by Stiga, and they had strong links with Yusaka. Mr. Ogamura was the head of Yusaka at the time, and this Stiga sent some players, some of their sponsored players, to Japan to train with under Mr. Ogamura. And I went with a Danish lad called Klaus Pedersen, and we went there for 55 days. I probably remember every single day, because it was, you got up at 6 o'clock in the morning, did circuit training, went for quite a long run, came back, washed the floor, had raw eggs for breakfast with some rice, and it went on from there. So it was about six and a half hours a day training, and yeah, it was an experience, and came back a lot stronger. So my psyche sort of came from that period, really, and it took me a while to get into it. Physically, I got stronger and stronger over the next 2 years, and I think that's why I managed to play the game that I played to a certain level. Yeah,
wasn't it in on that same trip where you had to hit 1,000 forehands without a mistake, and even if you got to 999, you had to go back again? Was that on that trip?
Well, that was actually in Sweden. It wasn't 1,000, but it was 300. It was 300 without missing.
Sure.
And if you missed, you went back to 0 again. So you could be there for 2 hours doing the same practice.
Yeah.
But Japan was the first. We've been traveling for 36 hours, and we got off the plane, and Mr. Ogamura met us, and he sort of said, "Would you like something to eat?" And we hadn't eaten for about 5 hours, so we said, "Yeah, okay." And it was about 7 or 8 o'clock at night, so we had a quick sandwich or something, and then he took us straight to the training hall.
Yeah.
And we were expecting to go to bed, and so he said, "Can you get change?" Well, my bags hadn't arrived, so I had to borrow. I had my bat with me, which was, always keep your bat in your hand luggage. So I had my bat with me, and that was it. So I borrowed some kit, and Pedersen went on with probably the biggest Japanese player I'd ever seen, and I went on with Mr. Ogamura, and I had a 2-minute knock-up backhands and forehands, and he said, "Right, do this," and he did a backspin service, and the ball bounced on his side of the table, bounced over on my side, then bounced back on his side. And I thought, oh, right. So, I didn't do it, and I had about 10 attempts, and I got the ball to spin back, but I couldn't get it to bounce once and then come back over the net. So he said, "Okay, you go and practice." So I thought, okay, and he pointed to the side of the hall, and I had to practice on the floor, just doing backspin and getting the ball to spin back through my legs. And I did that for 1 hour and 10 minutes. Meanwhile, Pedersen was getting a battering with multi-ball, and this Japanese chap was bouncing the ball and smashing the ball as hard as he could, and Pedersen had to test his reactions, having just come off the plane for 36 hours. And I thought I was getting hard done to, but when I turned around and saw him, he had ball marks all over his face and his arms where this chap had been hitting him with the ball. So it was quite fun. Then we changed round, and then eventually we got back to the where we were staying, and and then we were up at 6 o'clock in the morning running. So it was a shock to the system, but fantastic, absolutely fantastic.
Okay, right. So let's we come to one of the main highlights. Where did it all begin, Nick?
Went to senior school and started playing at lunchtime when it was raining. I was at the time I was mad keen on football. That's the only thing I wanted to do. I actually went to the school that I went to because they played football, and the school I might have gone to was a rugby school. So I was actually just absolutely mad keen on football. But when it was raining, as I say, we went and started playing at lunchtime. Then one of my friends in the school was in Middlesbrough, and one of my friends used to go to a Saturday club at St. Joseph's Youth Club. And I used to go and watch the Borough play at Ayresome Park. And after the match, I used to go to St. Joseph's Youth Club for an hour and a half and play there. And then after about a year, 6 months, I started going to Redcar Boys Club again to play football. But then the place where we played, they shut the area down, so we could only play table tennis. So I started playing there. I was playing every night. So I was either doing football every night or football and table tennis. And when we couldn't play football, especially when the evenings were dark, I just played table tennis every night. So I played 3 or 4 hours a night, and eventually found out that Ormsby Table Tennis Club was a club that most of the best young players were going to. So I went there, and after that, it just went on from there. And obviously, Alan Ransom was the organizer and coach there, and he started taking us to tournaments, and I got the bug for it sort of pretty quickly. But I mean, we just practiced and practiced and practiced and practiced all the time.
So at the youth club, it was all pretty, probably same as me. It was all pretty unstructured. You just played winner stays.
It was winner stays on.
Yeah.
That was it. It was winner stays on. So yeah, and we used to get the person who was on the longest got a free Coke at the end of the evening from the youth leader. That was it.
So having had all that time at the youth club, you then joined a structured club in Ormsby. Had you developed bad techniques, or were you able to iron them out? Because you certainly didn't have any when you played.
Well, we didn't. Yeah, I didn't really understand what technique was about. And I have to say, Alan took us to Newcastle to watch England Czechoslovakia, and that's the first time we've seen any international players, or indeed Dennis. Dennis was playing, and Stuart Gibbs, I think. And we hadn't seen any player of that caliber before. And I think the Czechs won. And I thought Stanek was a fantastic player, and I thought I'd learn how to play his topspin. So I practiced for quite a while, copying his topspin. I found out sort of a year later that he wasn't known for his forehand topspin. he was a counter hitter. So it was a bit strange that I was sort of was back in the wrong chap as far as forehand topspin was concerned. But eventually, you got around the circuit and just understood a little bit more about what was happening. And Alan was in the early stages of learning all his skills as far as the coach is concerned. So everyone was learning at the same time, really. And eventually, we started getting things sorted out, and the structure was became quite professional, could I say, as far as what was happening at Ormsby.
Yeah. So you're at Ormsby under the tutelage of Alan Ransom. But there's some other good players as well, weren't there, at the time? There was 3 or 4 players. When I actually joined the club, there was 3 or 4 players that were better than me. They were all 2 or 3 years older, which helped as far as the standard was concerned. And they all played, again, virtually every night. And so there was a lot of intensity in the practice. It wasn't messing about.
everyone wanted to beat each other. And although the structure of how we practiced wasn't probably as good as it should have been, we were actually very competitive, and it was intense. And you're up there for three or 4 hours, and there's probably 6 of us on 2 tables. So it was, we were there for quite a long time and had a lot of practice.
Yeah, right. Just before I hand over to Mark and Elisa, so you're at the Ormsby Club, everybody's learning together, you're growing together. Alan's taking you around to a few tournaments. What was that defining moment, the breakthrough? Was it a good tournament win? Were you recognised by the England selectors? Was it a breakthrough moment you can remember? The second season that we went on the circuit, I went down to the North Middlesex Open, and I think I was 13, possibly, can't remember, about 13, and I won the under 14s, under 14s and the under 17s, and I think I beat four of the top 10 juniors in England, and that was for people from my area. That was that didn't really happen. So that was probably one of the times when I thought, oh, there's a chance here. Yeah. Brilliant. Okay, well that's kind of. I'm going to pass you over to Mark. What have you got for Nicky, Mark?
I just wanted to touch on about the practice, Nicky, just about, you mentioned obviously going to Japan, your early days practicing at Ormsby where it wasn't maybe as structured. So, I mean, from your perspective, what type of practice did you think became most effective for you when you became an England internationalist? And also to touch upon, what do you think young players should be practicing now? We also have different theories, multi-ball, match play, whatever it should be, irregular. So from your early days and obviously from where you think it should go now.
I think, don't get me wrong, the practice at Ormsby in the very early days when I was the youngest player there, it was mainly match type play, but then Alan organised a more structured programme. So there was a number of years at Ormsby where it was very, very structured, and we went through all the strokes and had sort of a couple of weeks on each stroke. When I sort of started playing for England, I was 13 when I played for England under 17s. There wasn't a cadet group at that time. I think the cadets came in the year after, or the year after that, I can't remember. But from then on, my practice was more about the physical side of playing table tennis. I used to enjoy moving and running around and sort of trying to be athletic and enjoy the game that way rather than be more technical. It's just the way I was. It's just the way I was, really. And so my practices involved a lot of footwork, and eventually we started building up different types of exercise to improve different aspects of how you move and how you can maintain balance. With that, obviously regular footwork gives you the drills and helps you to do the movements, but then you need to introduce the sort of semi-irregular and irregular, so you learn how to anticipate and move depending on what's happening in the match, what the opponent's going to do, if you can anticipate what the opponent's going to do. So there was more thought-provoking practices that needed to be involved, and there was no multi-ball at the time. It was sort of unheard of in the terms. It's the only time I saw it was when I was in Japan and forgot about it because I was just laughing at Pedersen getting hit all the time. But so we didn't really do multi-ball, and not during my playing career, I don't think. But anyway, so my practices were more about physically trying to improve the positions I could get in to play my stronger shots all the time. So I based everything around that. As far as what players should do now, there's a lot more knowledge because of technology. You know, we know what happens in China, in Japan, in Sweden, in Germany, everywhere. We just know we know what's happening there a lot more than we did 30, 40 years ago. So the how you practice is multi-ball can be involved, and you can do multi-ball in all sorts of different ways. And who you practice with is very important as well. You need to practice against different styles, and you need to have the intensity, and your partner needs to have the intensity, so that you can actually do the practices and learn. You know, so you're actively learning what you are doing and what you need to do, so that you're the person who's going to develop. You know, if you've got a coach, and the coach is important, but you as the player need to understand this is what you've got to do, and you need to know whether you're doing it or not. The coach can help you to take that on board, but you've actually got to do it. You can't expect the coach to tell you what to do all the time.
I think that's a really good point, because I think in all these sessions we've done, Dave, I think this has come up so often about players taking responsibility. Coaches obviously take you so far in set exercises, but I think the big point to take away is obviously when you're reaching your sort of peak of understanding where your strengths were and putting your training around where you can improve your strengths. I think it's just so important for players to understand what affects their game, and they get the training from it. So I think it's just another good example, Dave, of that theory of players taking responsibility.
The players definitely do, but you know, the players can go down the wrong track, and they need guidance.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important. I mean, even the top players in the world in other sports have got coaches, and they're number 1 or 2 in the world at their sport, and they've still got coaches who are helping them. But the responsibility, when it comes down to it, is the player needs to do it, and the player needs to understand what's happening, and they actually need to do it, and they just need some advice and encouragement. Encouragement is very important, because from my experience, confidence is the thing that is lacking with many players. Certainly a lot of English players haven't achieved where they could have achieved because of lack of confidence, and that is a culture thing that can be you can improve that in the training hall and in the group. You know, you don't have to be arrogant, you need to be confident. There's a difference between arrogance and confidence. Arrogance can stop you training properly, whereas confidence can help you to do everything better.
Good. Elisa? Yeah.
You spoke about training there, and I was wondering, like, did you have any specific kind of training routines or like areas that you'd work up on in the run up to like kind of matches or any tournaments that came up?
Yeah. There was a general program to try and improve your own game over a long term, like say 2 months, 6 months, and in the early stages, you know, where do you want to be in the next 2 or 3 years, things like that. But as we got more knowledgeable, we used to train up for different events, and that's when you started getting the best results. So you know, tactically training to play against particular players, particular teams, as well as just fine-tuning your game to make sure that you're ready and as sharp as you possibly can be to play in a particular event. And that, you know, sometimes from a personal point of view, that got lost sometimes within my career. Sometimes I'd turn up to an event and I wasn't in good condition because I was either overtrained or possibly hadn't trained enough for that particular event. And with hindsight, that's when possibly a little bit more guidance could have been given from a coaching point of view. But again, you know, if the player can take that on board and has more knowledge when they're younger and they gain that knowledge, then they would possibly not go down that route of going to tournaments and knowing or realizing that they haven't prepared properly. So it's it is going back to this idea that players need to take the responsibility. It helps them as their career progresses.
Okay, have you got a follow-up, Elisa, or?
Through everything you've been telling us, it's quite obvious that you were quite hard-working from the beginning in table tennis. What kind of drove you to kind of put in all that effort from the beginning?
I did that in every sport. I wanted to be good at everything I did. I wanted to be I wanted to be, locally I wanted to be the best at it to start off with. Whatever sport it was, I wanted to try and excel. And then in table tennis, I actually loved the sport and I loved doing the training. But deep down, eventually, you train. I used to train to try and beat people. So that was the motivation. Eventually, train to win. And took me a while to sort of get into that stage where I felt I had the confidence to win. And when you get more confident, you actually train even better. And then all these things come into play, that you train up for certain events and you're starting to do the right things, and physically you keep yourself in good condition. And so it's working hard is a prerequisite. If players are not prepared to work hard, I don't see how you can build confidence into them. And confidence is a massive thing.
Okay, right. What was Linda doing at this time? Was she sort of building up a little table tennis career, a more successful table tennis career? Or
yeah. That's why I wouldn't let her come down and have the interview, because she did far better than I did.
Yeah.
I've got a few notes here. She started when she was 9. Maybe that's the advantage she had over me. Yeah. So she started when she was 9. Played for England juniors or England cadets then when she was 13. Played over 250 times for England overall through her career. And we've gone through a number of things that she won. I think she was ranked, the best ranking was number 12 in Europe and 24 in the world. So that was pretty impressive. The world rankings, there was lots of Chinese players and Japanese players in those world rankings. So that was pretty good. She's Commonwealth champion in the team, and she trained very hard as well. So her attitude was, when she was on the table, it was table tennis, and you work as hard as you can. And and Jill Parker was the same as well. Her training on England training camps was phenomenal. The focus that she had was, as soon as she was on the table till the minute she finished, she was 100% focused. Every single shot she played. Yeah. So, and that's one of the reasons why she was as good as she was. And I think Linda was in that vein as well.
Two European titles, unbelievable. I mean, I remember back in, I think it was I'm going to guess about 1981, and the European League, to all the listeners, was very important then. You used to play a match in, might be Nottingham, might be London, and there'd always be about 400 or 500. Well, it was full. It was always full. We played the big teams like Hungary with Gergely and Janja. And Linda just played in the doubles with Des. So where the men would have 2 games, and Jill would have a singles and a doubles, but Linda only played the doubles. And that season, she paired up with Des and played 7, won 7. I mean, absolutely unbelievable to come in.
Exactly. It's so difficult to come in. I mean, basically, you come in cold because you come in halfway through the match. You haven't, there's no practice tables in those days. You had to, you had to sort of wait until it was your turn to go on the table. So she'd be sat down for an hour and a half and then expect to go on and play against world-class players with a sort of a 30-second knock. So,
and on nearly every occasion, she was the only cold player because played, and the other lady was probably playing the singles. But for England, it was Linda played all the mixed doubles and Jill played all the singles.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
It was a phenomenal effort. I wouldn't be able to do it.
No. Mentally, it was unbelievable. I mean, Des was. Yeah, I mean, she obviously she won it with Des and she won it with Jill. You know, so she won it with a left-hander and she won it with a right-hander. So right. I think Nick's had an easy ride so far. I think it's about time he had the quick fire. Is that Mark or Elisa?
I've got that, Dave.
He doesn't know this. He's not been pre-prep for this.
No. So we have 12 questions, Nicky, all basically about your table tennis and how you play table tennis. And say it is quick fire. I think Brian Keane, it took about 45 minutes for him to get through this, Dave?
It was long fire.
Yeah, long fire, yeah. So question 1, were you a spin-based, a power-based, or in-between player?
I would like to think spin and power.
Timing, did you take it early, top of the bounce, or after the bounce?
Tried to take it at the top of the bounce, but quite often took it after.
Most effective / strongest stroke?
Forehand topspin.
Least effective?
Backhand block. Or backhand topspin. Or backhand anything.
From any player around the world, the one stroke you wish you had from them?
Liam Pitchford's backhand topspin.
That's a good one. Your best or favourite serve to use in games?
In my early career, it was the pendulum serve, the forehand, and towards the end of my career, the backhand backspin serve with extreme variation.
The best server you ever played against?
A few Chinese players. Shu Safar, who served round the net. Li Ching Kwang, left-hander, nickname was Tomahawk, but he had a fantastic serve. And I have to say, this, the recent players before the rule change, Gareth Herbert had an incredible serve. So a young English player, who's coaching in England at the moment. Didn't play a match against him. Oh, that would have been difficult.
I always missed them in tournaments, which was great.
Yeah.
Probably because I've knocked out too early. The best, your favourite opponent type: a defender, spinny, a blocker, or power player?
To play against?
Yes.
Defender.
You get that forehand topspin in. Your least favourite opponent type?
Speed player close to the table. Well, just Des Douglas.
The best player you ever played against?
Li Chenxi. Chinese, very, very fast, hard hitting, but there's other players, Stalin Bengtson. There's lots of players I've played against who were fantastic players, but I felt under the most pressure when I played him. I played great against him and lost 21-7, 21-13 at the Welsh Open, and I beat Stepanchik and a few other players there. I played him and I got 7-13, and there was quite a few good rallies.
The victory that gave you the most pleasure?
Never thought about that. As far as a single match is concerned, beating Yonya in the French Open. I think I beat him 3-1. Actually played quite well against him. So our best, as far as result was concerned, Trevor Taylor and I played the English Open when there was team events, and then the individuals were after the team events the next few days. Trevor and I won the team event, and we beat about 5 or 6 very, very strong teams to get there over a two-day period. And so that was the best performances that, well, from my point of view, that's probably the best performance over a 2-day period. And but the interesting thing was we played China 1 in the final. We beat China 2 in the second round, I think. We beat France, we beat Yugoslavia, we beat Russia, and 1 or 2 other teams. So we were playing, we were playing at the top of our game. And Trevor Taylor said to me, "We've won." I said, "Well, we haven't even started yet." He said, "Don't worry, we've won. China are going to throw the game." And I said, No. He said, "No, they're going to throw the game, definitely." He said, "Trevor, stop messing with my mind." And there was about 2,000 or 3,000 people watching the final at the Dome at Brighton. So I'm knocking up, and Trevor's laughing and joking with the 2 Chinese players, Lu Chi Wei and Li Qingquang. Li Qingquang was number 3 in the world at the time. Lu Chi Wei was in the top 10 probably. I can't remember. And anyway, so I go on first against Li Qingquang. And bearing in mind he's number 3 in the world, but Trevor has convinced me he's going to chuck the match. So I lost 21-8 in the first game because I'm expecting him not. And I was just. I lost the second game, a reasonable score. So I'm saying a few choice words to Trevor, and so Trevor goes on and beats Lu Chi Wei, and he comes off and said, "Don't worry, we're going to win this. They'll throw the doubles." Anyway, we lost the doubles 2 straight. So I'm thinking, Trevor, what's Trevor doing here? So Trevor goes on again and beats Li Qingquang. So it's 2-2, and I'm sort of thinking, what is happening? I said, Trevor's playing great. I was playing great. And Trevor's trying to convince me that the only reason why we're going to win is because the Chinese are going to throw it. So I thought, just get my mind. So I got my mind together and went on, played Lu Chi Wei, played quite well, 1-1. And Trevor's just sitting back, just thinking, well, we've won this. And I'm sort of, I'm trying my hardest. Anyway, we're playing. He gets to close in the third. It's about 19-17. He's 19-17 up, and he serves off. So it's 19-18. And I look around, and I looked at Trevor, and Trevor's got a big smile on his face. So I said, no. So, and then he served again. He served it straight at my forehand. So I topspun it. He played it back to my forehand. So I topspun it again. He played it back to me. I had 5 or 6 bullets, but he put them back to exactly the same place all the time. And I won that point. So it's 19. I think it was 19 or 29. I think I was 20-19 up then. And the crowd went berserk. And I turned around and I thought, he's going to throw this, isn't he? And Trevor's just sort of smiled. So anyway, so he served again, long, and I topspun it down his. I don't know where it was, and I won the match. And the crowd were going wild, but he'd thrown it.
Really?
Incredible. He'd thrown it because they called it friendship games. But the Swedes took it as, they weren't very happy that the Chinese were throwing matches because they thought we can beat them in any case. Why are they throwing matches?
Yeah.
Trevor and I weren't bothered. we were just pleased that we won. But we'd actually had 2 fantastic days of table tennis where we played great. But it was interesting to see that the Chinese were throwing doing friendship games.
Yeah.
They denied it. So
interesting. I mean, we had one more question. You're nearly rivaling Brian Keane, but I think that's fascinating. So, I mean, the last question was a player you most admire. I hope the wife's not too close to you though as well.
Yeah. Well, I would have to say two of my teammates, Dennis Neal and Des Douglas, for different reasons, but yeah.
Brilliant.
Interesting there, Nick, because you're talking about Des and you're talking about Trevor Taylor, two left-handers. Our theme next week is all about left-handers. So, yeah. Anyway, have we got any questions on YouTube coming up? Comments or nothing we've got to pick up on, Mark or Elisa?
Do you want to take them, Elisa, or?
Sure. Ian Rind asked, did Nicky play a tournament in Lanarkshire either in 1979 or 80, or is my memory playing tricks on me? If so, what memories does he have from playing in Scotland around then?
I think I played in an invitation tournament. It was a whiskey company, I believe.
Ben Eagles?
Yeah, that's it, yeah. I played there round about that time. I mentioned it because I won the tournament. But yeah, I did play there, and it was in a round dome type building, I think. And every time we've been to Scotland, the hospitality has been fantastic. So I've enjoyed my times up there.
That's why you can't remember what whiskey it was.
Yeah, probably.
Is there any more, Elisa or Mark, on YouTube? Oh, sorry, on Facebook?
Yeah.
I think the one was covered, wasn't it, about winning 3 against Japan? I think come from Sally Sutherland, but that was obviously right at the start, maybe logging in a bit late about winning the 3. But if we replay that back on, once we get it fixed on YouTube, you also look back and obviously Nicky's memories of that match.
Are there any comments we've missed that we've covered? Because it's always nice to give the people a shout who've bothered to put the comments on.
With one last question there, Andrew Milne asking about, is table tennis an actual martial art?
It can be.
Not when I'm playing it, Andrew, let's be honest.
Okay, right. It's 1975.
Attitude was when she was on the table, it was table tennis, and you work as hard as you.
Oh, we've got their feedback again, Mark. How have we managed?
It can be.
Oh, I don't know if Matt.
Okay. Oh, Matt said that. Okay, it's 1975, and there's a coaching course at Lee Green. And when you arrive, one of the coaches announced you've just been made England #1. I was on that course. That's why I remember it. So you was obviously taking up coaching while you was at the prime of your table tennis playing career. Do you remember that?
Yes, I mean, I wasn't actually taking up coaching as such. I was always very interested in how players played, how they hit the ball, how they moved, how they balanced themselves, what sort of, how they reacted under pressure and stuff like that. I was always, keen to find out what was happening with all the players, and most of the players when we're on the circuit, virtually all the players, I knew exactly how they played, what their techniques were, how they moved. And that wasn't just because I wanted to find out to try and beat them tactically. I was just fascinated the way players do things. So I was always interested in that, and that's I was sort of quite keen to talk about stuff like that, but I didn't really want to sort of become a coach at that time. I was just interested in the idea of how players played, but also I was getting into the idea that this is how I felt players should play. So I had an idea in my own mind about how players should be playing.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the way I was playing.
So, okay, let's get back to the younger Nicky Jarvis. He's starting to make his name. What was your first actual England call-up?
England juniors.
Yeah, let's start with England junior. And at the same time,
I was 13, and we played against. I was called up to play against West Germany at Barnsley Boys Club.
Right. And who was your teammates? Do you remember?
No.
Okay, right. And then and your first senior call up, how old was you then?
I was 15, and I think I was I was number one junior, and I think I'd had a couple of good senior tournaments where I'd beaten a few of the top senior players. And it was against Sweden, which is Hans Alser and Kjell Johansson, two of the best players in the world at the time. And it was an experience. They were very kind to me.
Who were your teammates then? Was it Chester and
Dennis? Dennis and I played. And Dennis, Dennis was very competitive against them. Yeah. I struggled a little bit, but they were very generous.
Yeah,
it was a very fantastic experience. But yeah.
And then, did you become a regular then, Nick, or were you in and out of the team?
Not at that stage. I was in and out. Yeah, in and out. When I got to sort of 17, 18, I started getting in the team a bit more then. Certainly when I came back from Japan.
Yeah. Did you find that when you first got into the England team, you'd have still been a junior, then it may put more pressure on you when you played junior tournaments, that they'd want to beat you even more?
Yeah. The pressure changes. When you first go on the circuit, you're under pressure because the players are better than you. And you've got to try and get up to their standard and try and beat them. So the standard of play, you've got to overcome that pressure. But you get to a stage where you start beating those players, and the pressure's on them, and it's not on you, as it were. And then once you start becoming the high ranked player, and you're the number one seed, all the time or most of the time, that's a different type of pressure.
Yeah.
But I always said to myself, it's always better to have the pressure at the top than have the pressure being somewhere down the bottom. So, but that still didn't make me have good performances every time I played. But yeah, overall, I felt it was far better to be in that position. Try and be the best player, and that's far better than not being.
Oh, yeah. And did you go to the European Youths in those days?
Yeah, I think I went to the European Youths three times, and my final year, I had a pretty good tournament. I won 13 out of 15 in the team event, and it was the top 16 teams put into two groups of 8. I lost 2 against Sweden. One of them, I was 19-16 up in the third and lost. I couldn't believe it, but so that was disappointing. But yeah, overall, I think we got a bronze medal in the team event. I lost 28-26 in the third to a Russian player who got to the final, which was a bit devastating from my point of view. But anyway.
Okay, I'm going to go back to Mark.
Actually, just a couple of quick observations from what you were saying there, Nicky, about you on the quickfire. You struggled to think of the victory that gave you the most pleasure. You just recalled 2 defeats there, exactly what the score was, who they were against, and amazing that competitive nature, that's what sticks in your mind.
Exactly. I mean, winning was something that you strive for, and therefore you sort of just thought it was part and parcel of what you did, and you possibly deserve the results. Whereas when you lose, it hits you. Well, it hit me more than it should possibly. I don't know.
It's funny, a question's just come up on Facebook there that actually was something that I wanted to ask about. It's actually from Holly McNamara that sort of joins us sort of quite often on this. That about playing in a team or playing an individual. it's quite clear, obviously, playing in Ormsby back in your younger days of, I think you became European champions, was that right as well?
We managed to do that, which was some feat at the time, yeah.
And then about obviously playing in a team or playing as an individual, what gave you basically most enjoyment?
Both, really.
Yeah.
I really wanted to do well individually. You know, I wanted to put in good performances and beat people, but I also wanted to be, you know, I was pleased to be in a team and we were all fighting for each other. And I think over my career, I've been in sort of teams where there hasn't been a lot of team spirit, and I've been in teams that have been fantastic team spirit, and the best performances have always come from the team that's got good team spirit, and I sort of thrive on that as well.
Do you think, obviously, pick your brains more about sort of a young table tennis player trying to make it or trying to succeed professionally? I mean, do you think there was an advantage when you were growing up, obviously playing with Dennis Neal, Desmond Douglas, you had like a pool of players that you play against? In a country like Scotland, where maybe our pool isn't as, maybe bits of talent come through, but we don't have maybe that pool of players are playing against each other. Do you think there's an advantage of a young player maybe actually going abroad? Like the Andy Murray tennis scenario is probably the one closest to it, of trying to make it and going abroad. Or a club like Ormsby, where you're trying to, obviously that's where Paul Drinkle came from, other players have gone in from. What's your thoughts on that?
Having good practice partners is vital. So you've got to look at the situation and see where you're going to get the best practice. My practice with Dennis and the other players was at England training camps, and luckily, you know, for a few years we had, you know, quite a lot of England training camps. So that was fantastic practice, and we didn't sort of think that we should, you know, have to go to other countries all the time to practice, because we were getting good practice, as you said, on the England camps. But if you're playing locally and you're struggling to have players who are the same standard as you, then you've got to get on your bike and go and find the practice. And if that means going abroad, which is extreme, then you've probably got to do that. But it's not a foregone conclusion that you're going to be a top player if you go abroad. There's all sorts of things that are important, and that's when you need someone to guide you, and not just from a technical point of view. You need someone to guide you on all sorts of things and help you through different things, because foreign clubs are great, but it's not necessarily the best place to go. It's always better to have an option in your own. For me, it's always better to have an option in your own country. That's what I personally feel. I've sort of got quite strong feelings about that. But if you've got no option, then yeah, go abroad, but you need some help.
I think it's obviously a collection of players, and obviously what you talked about earlier in the chat about that sort of guidance of a coach, and sort of mentioned it a minute ago, but obviously as a player taking that responsibility, I suppose it's just getting that mix together.
It is, yeah.
Of finding what's the right path, because I think there's many examples of British players that have gone abroad over the last 20 years, which hasn't worked out and they haven't made that next step. So I think it's that maybe confidence that you mentioned earlier, not arrogance, but being confident as a player and taking those next steps. But it's just very interesting to hear your thoughts just on where the next steps of a player should be, because it's come up before in a lot of our previous sessions about what young players, what should they do. So hopefully that helps our viewers maybe make decisions for their own careers.
Yeah, it is a difficult one, but I mean, there's no doubt. If you're getting very good practice, there's a better chance that you'll improve. But it's not just about the practice. It's all the other things that are involved, and it's quite important that you do have some help, and you're shielded from some of the other things that might be out there that distract you or send you down the wrong route as far as how you play or what you should be doing or whatever. So even though, I certainly think that players need to, they've got to take responsibility. They're still quite young.
Yeah,
they do need some help.
Yeah. Okay, Lisa, before I just ask Nicky about his coaches on England duty, Lisa, what have you got for us?
It's kind of about player development again. So you've obviously been under pressure, kind of in matches and stuff. You've had those situations. What kind of tools did you use, like mentally, when you were under pressure? And do you have like any tips to kind of improve mental strength for maybe young players?
Coping strategies.
Yeah, it's yeah. I mean, I always feel that. I mean, we've had sort of lectures and meetings and discussions with sports psychologists, and over the years, quite a few. And it's interesting talking to sort of ex-players and current top players about this. The mental side of the game, and it is individual, and some players gain strength. The players gain strength in different ways. I mean, my sort of throughout my career, I would say I've had two terms where I was in a very good frame of mind, where I felt confident about what I was doing, and I felt confident about going on the table and playing against any player who I had to play against. It was probably the last year I was a junior, and then 1974, 75, 76, so that 2-year period, I felt very, very strong. Even though I might have had some bad results, I felt strong in myself. And the other times I was poor in how I felt about things. So it's not an exact science, and my sort of first of all, make sure that you're doing everything you can to, be the best that you can, so that your attitude in the training hall is the right attitude. That you're working on the right things, and how you'll be in the moment. So this is a more specific. Actually be in the moment when you're in a match. You need to be in the moment. You need to know. You need to understand how you're going to win the next point. What do you need to do to win the next point? And if you focus on things like that, the nerves, as it were, and your thought of, am I going to win? Am I going to lose? Or I daren't lose this. Those thoughts sort of tend to go in the back of your mind, and so little things like that. How are you going to distract yourself from having those bad thoughts is something that is individual and different. Paul Drinkall and Liam Pitchford, two fantastic players, but they're two completely different personalities. So they would go about in different ways. And speaking to sports psychologists, speaking to ex-players, speaking to coaches who've had lots of experience, the player needs to get information from those people, but again, they've got to take things on board themselves and decide this is what's going to help me. I haven't really given you a specific answer, but it's one of those things where some people think that players are just strong all the time. Well, they're not. They're not. Everyone's got a threshold, and when you played against the Chinese players, they were very, very confident. But if you got close to them at the end of the game, they got nervous as well. So it wasn't a situation whereby this system produces that type of person and that system produces this type of person. there's there's different thresholds, and preparing before you go to a tournament, doing the right things, getting your mind focused, having no distractions. The Swedish juniors, when I was a junior, they never used to talk to you until after the tournament. They were sort of pretty friendly, but didn't really want to talk. After the tournament, they were your best friends and very social and everything else. But they were the best players at the time, and they had a slightly different attitude to than lots of the other countries. I mean, the Eastern Bloc countries at the time, they were sort of ushered, and so they had a different. It was more difficult for them to actually do anything else other than just be focused on the table tennis. But the Swedes could, the Western country that was open to everything. But when they got to the tournament, they were focused on they were going to win the tournament. So that was good, and I feel with well, let's say, I mean, I've obviously got experience with players in England, and my first impression when I was sort of full-time coaching with the England junior team was very few of the players had confidence. They expected to go to the tournament and lose, whereas then we tried to change that philosophy, and it was changing it in the training hall on the England training camps, and then getting them to try and change it, and when they were training at home, trying to make sure that they were stronger at home. Why were they practicing? What was the reason for them to practice at home? What were they trying to achieve? And then getting them on board with the picture of, this is the standard they need to get to. If you get to that standard, you'll beat these players, all things being equal. Therefore, how are you going to manage that? What are you going to do to get, what are you going to do to get to that standard? And I think we had some success. The sort of I think I stopped. I can't remember how long ago it was now. 3 years ago, 4 years ago. All 4 teams at the European Youth Championships were in the top group. So I mean that is reasonably successful for a squad that 4 or 5, 6, 7 years previous was struggling to get through the first round of tournaments. We obviously had Liam Pitchford involved in those earlier days, so he was getting to the final, things like that. But most of the players weren't getting through the groups, and it wasn't because they were bad players; they just had no confidence, and the expectation was very, very low. But you can't just sort of say, "Look, you're English players; you're going to be great." You've got to put the work in. You've got to be realistic, and I think a lot of players took that on board, and then eventually, it does come down to, are you good enough? And some players will do everything that they should do, but they're just not quite good enough, and that's unfortunate. But that's the way competitive sport is.
Right, Nick, I want to go back to your own playing career again. It may have been Johnny Leach, but I imagine Les Greswell was your first England captain, and you've had Brian Byrne, and you've had Peter Simpson. You've worked under all those coaches. What was it like? Start from your first England coach to your last England.
All very different. Les Greswell was our junior coach.
Yeah,
he was the England junior coach. Oh, he was both actually.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. So I was. So Des, again, I bring Des up because he's a year younger than me. So he was involved in the virtually in the same period. We were influenced. I think we were both influenced by Les in his idea of how you practice and the physicality of what you do and the speed. I mean, Des didn't particularly like doing physical training, but he was very, very fast naturally, and eventually he was obviously an athlete. And I think he was probably influenced by Les. Les was influenced by the Asians, which was quite, it was where I was coming from as well. So yeah, the type of training that we did in the early days, I was probably on board with what he was doing, and yeah, it was interesting being in his company.
Oh yes, I know. Yeah,
he's quite an interesting chap. So and then
Byrne next, was it?
yeah, Brian Byrne was more on the technical side. We used to work out all sorts of different practices. He developed practices with each player. And we had a very, very strong physical training regime that, that, prepared you, certainly from what's the word? Stamina point of view. We sort of we could play for hours under the sort of the type of training that we did. But yeah, Brian worked on specific practices, and he was quite technical. So yeah, he was pretty good in that area. Pete Simpson was Pete
next.
Yeah. Pete was very disciplined, and he organised people to come in from different sports and help us with physical training. I think we went to see Wilf Paish at one stage in Leeds, and we did some training there, trying to do various things. Yes, yeah. So Pete, yeah, again, very, very organised.
Yeah, was he your last England coach? Would he have been, Pete? As a player?
I think so, yeah. Yeah, he was, yeah.
Okay, I have one. Well, we're going to wrap up at 9 because we did start late. But so therefore, anything come up on Facebook or YouTube or whatever, Mark?
No, I don't think there's anything there, Dave. No, nothing, no new questions.
Yeah, okay. Matt, Mark, have you got another question for Nick?
I just wanted to pick your brains again about technology. Obviously, it's something you've been heavily involved with. I think part of your table tennis career being involved in table tennis equipment. How have you seen the technology, obviously being close to it, how much impact do you think it's had over the last sort of 10, 15 years, and compared to when you played to where it is now, of the phases we've talked about? You used to glue up, we don't glue up anymore, and all these type of things that have come into the game.
A phenomenal change. I mean, the equipment has enabled players to hit the ball faster, producing very good spin, which gives you control. So you've got power and control with spin, and there's a variation there. Obviously, you have the long pimple era and anti-spin era, which certainly in the girls game is still quite prevalent, and I think the equipment has helped the players to become faster as well. I think the players on the world circuit are incredibly fast, and because of the equipment, I think the equipment is the ball's moving quicker. They try to slow it down with having a bigger ball. But the game is so fast. I think it's faster than it's ever been. So yeah, I think the equipment's probably at the moment it's better than it was, because the gluing up situation was horrendous. Mm-hmm. And now the players don't have to glue up. But yeah, so the equipment at the moment has helped the players to play more powerful table tennis, and to be safer because of the topspin that they can produce with less effort.
I think it's also like with the modern game as well. It's actually, I think table tennis players are the ones that only sort of really appreciate this, but the power that they put into it, from the sort of leg strength to the upper body. I mean, you look at players, and when you watch like Ocharov and Calderano, when they're practicing, you see their practice routines, the power and how dynamic it is, and actually technology is a big part of it, actually the speed off the bat, but actually their own power is actually it's quite
exactly.
amazing as well.
Yeah, I think technology has brought the physicality of the players on. I think they're incredibly quick, incredibly powerful, and their bodies have just developed better than players from yesteryear.
Elisa?
Just kind of talking about like the modern game and like the older kind of style of game, like when you kind of played, do you prefer the kind of game style that you used to play then compared to the modern game? Which one do you think's kind of like better than the other?
I think I prefer watching the players now.
Yeah.
I think the likes of Tibor Clamper, players like that would be top players playing the game that they were playing in the 70s, because they were, he was taking the ball sort of fairly early, backhand and forehand topspin, great technique, wonderful feel, good reactions. He'd probably be a lot fitter than he was in the 70s if he was playing now. But that sort of style, I took the ball a little bit later because I had a sort of a defect in my backhand, I think. So I took the ball later. Otherwise, I'd have been trying to play similar to what the players are doing now. That's what that was my idea about how I'd like to have played. So I enjoyed it even more because it's a style that I think is dynamic and exciting to watch. And I think it just means it shows how athletic the sport can be. So I love watching the top players.
Okay, so very involved in the training camps, and you've just touched on Pete Simpson, which is really good. I mean, Pete was a visionary, in fairness. He would bring in outside coaches. So, having a very talented son, has that made you a better coach?
I've got two very talented sons.
Yeah, I know, yeah, Ben and Matt, yeah.
Yeah.
But does that because
are we doing this now?
Forerunner for.
All right, yeah. I think it's given me a better insight into what happens in other sports.
Yeah.
From your young kids right the way through to adulthood, as far as how they behave, what affects them, how outside influences affect them, how other parents react to things, the level of coaching in different sports, and the management of helping people through disappointment as well as success.
Yeah,
that's I think we learned a lot about that.
Yeah.
Linda, both of us.
Yeah. Okay, well, boys and girls, I'm going to wind up unless you've got a burning question, because that leads us, because Nicky will be back in 2 weeks' time, and that will be the journey. Well, we will go more into Nicky's coaching career in 2 weeks' time, but we're also going to go from nappies to national, as his two talented boys went through sport. One of them became a professional footballer for Gillingham, and he then went on to play for Wolves. He was transferred for 10 million to West Ham. Somebody said I could Dave Fairham go an hour and a half without mentioning Nottingham Forest. Well, Nicky Jarvis turned down Nottingham Forest, so he's in my bad books. Anyway, thank you, Nicky. Thank you, Elisa and Mark. Apologies to all our viewers. It is nothing to do with us. YouTube was down. Matt's done a brilliant job on getting us on Facebook, and next week we're on Tuesday night with Colin Wilson, and the topic is left-handedness. As you know, Colin Wilson's a left-hander, and as Nicky was saying, he played with Trevor Taylor, great player, very talented, but played and competed against Desmond Douglas, left-handed, Skylar Tandrew, left-handed, Graham Sandley, left-handed, Colin Wilson, left-handed, Kenny Jackson, left-handed, and so it goes on. And we should have our own Chris Mayne and Pete Lugden, who are both left-handed. Okay, so thanks a lot, everybody, and we'll see you a week on Tuesday, just as a one-off. Thanks, bye.